And again, Stephen, I want to thank you for sending me your article on it. Obviously, you can tell my take was a little bit different on my aspect. Uh, I have really been working on the effect of the vicious cycle. And, you can't look at these kids having all these nasal issues, snot-nosed rugrats who can't breathe through their mouth, and wonder why later on they have high arch palates and they need so much orthodontics, and then they have airway issues. So that's where I'm coming from. I want to prevent it all. I want us to get rid of ultra high processed food. I want us to work on not overusing antimicrobials, and I want us to restoring our microbiome and our immune systems.
I love it. What a wonderful presentation. Thank you. Thank you. I know
Thank
that
you.
Dr. Steve Lambert wanted to ask a couple questions, so I'm actually going to turn my camera off. You can turn
Oh,
your
okay, sure. Wow, there's like 32 comments in the chat,
Yeah,
which I
people
just
have been
saw.
going crazy. So we're gonna ask all those questions. Don't you worry about them. But I'm gonna turn my camera off so I can do a beautiful cut of you too. Go ahead, Dr. Lambert.
So, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I think it was a blessing to be here. Thank you. I really appreciate all the work you put into that. It was wonderful. I'd just like to say that one thing about the oral appliances is that there are provisional appliances now that can be
Right.
made up, just in a visit. So that's something that some of the people watching tonight should be aware of. And besides that, the other issue that I would like to just bring to the forefront is that a simple question like, do you snore, would be adequate to screen. And why, or better question is, how can we change, the landscape today and try to get the OBGYNs to ask,
Oh,
do you snore?
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's all that I'm concerned about. How do we
And you're
change it?
so
Change the
right on
dial.
that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
such a simple question to ask is, do you snore? And there's research to back all. I showed on every one of these issues, I showed like one article, and there's, as
Yeah.
you know, there's like a dozen each one,
Yeah.
but you can't show all these articles. I had to cut out so much to do it in an hour. But the reality is, I got involved simply because of seeing kids and looking at the parents and wondering, how did this child get to this place to begin with? Now, back in the 70s, when I was in training, I was very fortunate. I had Joe Sims give me lectures, and they were all on function, and Tom Barber and Ricketts and the Wilson brothers. So we had all these great people, and then we stopped treating it and we went backwards. And I would just always wonder if all these parents had been treated back early
Right.
back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and had normal facial development, how much better off we would be. And thank you for bringing up the provisionals, because you're right, absolutely. I've never done a provisional, so I'm glad you brought that up. Getting them out of snoring right away is essential. So that's why I would go ahead and have samples of nasal spray, and say, try this nasal spray, anything. I mean, any silly little thing, and especially with kids with the snotty, runny noses. I said, well, he can't breathe at night. Can you just try this nasal spray? And like I said, about a third of the time, I get back a really positive result. So I'm going like, hey, for a free sample of nasal spray, at least I'm doing something. And the pediatricians will always say, they'll outgrow it. Yeah, they'll outgrow it. That's what they always say. I always say, if they're going to outgrow it, how come we have all these adults on CPAPs?
Right, exactly.
We're not outgrowing it, are we?
I do have a question related to what you just mentioned. A patient asked me this week, okay, if we go through this whole process of palatal expansion, myofunctional therapy, what are the likelihood that she was talking about her child, that my child, when he has children, that these children are not going to have airway issues? Is there any correlation? Because we always there's still that genetic component?
Well, the genetic components, there is always a genetic component, but most of your genes are not expressed. So if you look at the human genome, a vast majority of genes are quiet. They're methylated, or due to histone deacetylation, they're not actually functioning. You have to turn on genes, and that's why we have oncogenic bacteria that actually turn on cancer. There's even metabolic reasons for a lot of these bacteria. I don't know if you know the work of Sandra Bowman, but her stuff is just incredible on cancer and the role of bacteria. But Deborah Nejman published in Science in May of 2020 the research of microbiologists into cancer, saying, hey, this is 2020. Since 1920, we've been telling medicine that cancer cells have bacteria inside, and they seem to be controlling the metabolism of cancer cells. The vast majority of these are oral pathogens. What make oral pathogens grow more? Mouth breathing. And of course, bad diet. So you're setting yourself up so that parent asking about their kids, parental intervention is so important to try to turn the tide back. We've been going the wrong way for thousands of years, actually, sadly, especially since the 1840s with mass-produced food and cheap sugar. But even before that, I mean, even the Egyptians with eating wort. You know, it took us a long time to figure out why they were getting all those cavities. I don't
Wow.
know if anybody here, raise your hand if you've eaten wort. I've actually eaten wort, and I go like, wow, that's really like eating, it's like eating oatmeal with sugar all over the top.
That's what it looks like. Nobody don't think you're unique.
Yeah,
You know,
it's all natural. It's all natural.
We have a question from Anne. Is there any literature showing mothers with digestive disease have fetuses and children who develop more chronic medical and dental conditions?
Actually, some of those, there, I don't have them off the top of my head, but the microbiome studies show yes. And in fact, especially going through celiac disease in certain families and so on, there's a famous one, I want to say Byrne et al., that was published in the Journal of Gut probably about 8-10 years ago. They looked at, in fact, the title of the article was gluten sensitivity, first degree relatives. No, gluten sensitivity, microbiome, and first degree relatives. And what they did was they took people who had celiac disease, like a young lady, and they would look at the brother. The young lady could not eat pizza and beer, he could. And they would look at the microbiomes, and they would genetically be very similar, but the microbiome was the difference. The brother would have tons of gluten metabolizers. And a lot of these gluten metabolizers are like the Rothia, but also a lot of your common lactobacilli, like Lactobacillus rhamnosus, which is no more than culturelle. Lactobacillus rhamnosus is LGG, culturelle for crying out loud.
Wow.
And back in 2018, I think it was 2017. Geez, I think now 2014. That's like 10 years ago now. Harvard patented the Rothia genus as a treatment for celiac disease and gluten sensitivity. So yeah, if you go back at the literature, looking at people with IBS, you show that the kids are more likely to have problems with it too eventually, because again, the bacteria come from the mom, but specifically it's the oral microbiome. So if you get the mom to fix her oral microbiome, you can always reverse the kids. Get in there, and when you do the probiotics, should be a probiotic prebiotic combination. Look at the research on autism. All the studies showing great improvement in autism behavior have with probiotics always combine prebiotics and probiotics.
Wow.
There's been like 5 major large trials, and of course in Arizona we have that big fecal matter transplant study done that's been going on for thousands of people are waiting to get into, going on for quite some time now. Jane Addams is one of the people in charge of that. And they've been doing fecal transplants and reversing a lot of the symptomology of autism, much better behavior, learning, so on, gut, all that. So you could redo it, but you have to do oral, gut, and do the prebiotic. You got in the mouth. You got to hit with a prebiotic. Oh, did you see the thing from Bristol? They sent out a case report on Serratia marescens and the severe infection, but they got rid of it using xylitol and a probiotic. So you got to think about all these great articles out there on the combo policy, and make sure it's a good probiotic and make sure you're doing the xylitol correctly.
Is there really a big difference between the refrigerated probiotics and non-refrigerated?
Maybe not anymore because they've gotten much better at how they encapsulate. Part of it is when you encapsulate a probiotic, if you don't do it correctly, you kill all the bacteria. The compression forces will kill it. If you package it wrong with the wrong type of powders, and if you use, some of them are slightly, there's bad combinations done sometimes.
Okay.
There was one that came out that's no longer on the market where they had these 3 probiotics in the same capsule, but the 3 probiotics will all kill each other. And they didn't get a very good clinical result in one of their trials. I said, well, because the 3 bacteria you pick all kill each other.
Exactly.
So I don't know how you would expect that. I go, you should have probably asked me first.
Oh,
I got started back in micro back in 1974, doing research with a very well-known microbiology researcher. And Dr. Jack Dyer was way ahead of his time. And it's so funny. I feel very blessed being able to sitting on some of these tremendous lecturers from these people who are since gone, like Joe Sims and Tom Barber. But there was a gap. And this gap has been tragic because during this gap period, nothing got passed down. Who was just talking? Oh, K.K. Mäkinen from Turku University in Turku, Finland, saying that all the greats have retired and no one knows what the younger people are doing because they haven't been contacting each other. And so there might be a gap of knowledge.
wow. There's just so much.
I'm trying to close the gap a little bit here.
There are so many questions. I'm not sure what your time.
Yeah, I know. I'm seeing all these. Yeah, the multiple pregnancies are always interesting because without being able to look at any decent research, I don't remember anything that I thought was a good study published on multiple pregnancies. Only on the older you are as you get pregnant, that has an influence. That could be a second or third pregnancy on it. I do know that certain things like, your risk of Alzheimer's goes up the more pregnancies.
Wow.
That's well published.
Kids just drive us crazy.
You know what I think it is? I think it's sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
Because the brain, a well-known neurologist said this to me. What is good for the heart is good for the brain. I asked him, how about cardiac exercise for Alzheimer's after that famous study on exercise for Alzheimer's? And she said, what's good for the heart is good for the brain. So when you think about it, sleep apnea is hard in the heart. It's got to be hard in the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that might be the issue with multiple pregnancies. You're actually extending the number of times you've had sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
That's a guess. I mean, I'm just postulating. I mean, it's just a hypothesis, but it doesn't mean that it's correct or incorrect.
Oh my goodness, I feel like we're gonna have to have you back.
Okay.
Maybe
well,
one day because this is wonderful and we still have so many questions. I know Dr. Lammer wasn't done talking to you, I don't think. Oh my goodness.
I can always talk to him later. We can always connect later. Let's see what other questions here.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about oral DNA tests with RXs for the pathogens over the acceptable threshold?
Oh, okay. As you know, there's all sorts of new testing coming out that is whole genome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or at least partial genome. So when you test for the big pathogens, you miss the little pathogens. So there are pathogens out there that have a huge influence on an individual, but maybe it's only 4%. It's like the famous saying, there are so many rare diseases that we combine all the rare diseases together as a group, they outnumber a lot of the common diseases. There's just that there's so many rare diseases. And it's not just testing for the pathogen, which is one of the reasons there's that Bristol company, Bristol test. You have to test for your probiotics too. You might be short the Rathia. You might be short the Neisseria or the Veillonella that you need for nitrate reduction. You might be short the Strep sanguinus you need, or short the Strep oralis you need for hydrogen peroxide production to kill the bad guys. So it's a balancing act. And this is a very important question. They give these arbitrary levels of what makes something pathogenic. Based on what? Because in the individual, you're going to have a different immune response. You're going to have a difference in capability healing just because of diet and exercise. And are you a mouth breather or are you a nasal breather? That'll make a difference in the pathogenicity. And how many beneficial bacteria you have to overwhelm that level of pathogens. I'm 100% all for like oral DNA and high risk 5 testing from direct diagnostics. I've used them for years. They're becoming obsolete very quickly. Because now we're getting more and more testing systems out. There's a bunch more coming in the market where you're going to be able to test for the level of the probiotics too. And just good inflammatory testing, level of neutrophils you find in the sulcus and so on. How many activated neutrophils you find in there. Do insurance companies cover HSTs for pregnant women? I've had so many bad experiences with the insurance companies. You are really asking the wrong person. I could tell you horror stories. I had insurance try to deny my cataract surgery, saying it wasn't necessary. I couldn't drive at night legally. I mean, come on, give me a break. My brother, younger brother, died because the insurance company wouldn't approve his CPAP. He didn't want to pay out of pocket for it. So I don't know. It depends on the insurance company. The insurance company is very all over the place. I don't know what criteria they would want. I mean, probably the firstborn child.
Yes.
That was a joke. That was a joke.
I am very gullible. I believe everything you say. Somebody's asking if you use orofacial myofunctional therapy or breathing agitators for your patients.
In my practice, we had on the second floor of my medical building, we had a wonderful myofunctional therapist. And so it was just, kind of a given that we had someone to work with.
That's incredible.
And we had two that were kind of competing, but one was trained at Northwestern University in speech pathology and had all sorts of credentials too. So, and then let's see here. Other signs. Go ahead.
What would be the best recommendation for someone with nasal issues, chronic allergies, head nasal surgery, and some relief, however, is still constant off and on congestion and just can't get 100% nasal breathing, diet changes, and gut health?
Well, that's a very good start right there. And also just checking the levels of your nitric oxide too.
Okay.
Because the nasal microbiome can be responding inadvertently to the fact that you might be very low in your nitric oxide levels. Again, you need to have that vasodilation, and you need to have that to produce your airway surface liquid. The airway surface liquid is a layer of liquid, obviously, in the airway that is protective, and you can enhance that with a nasal spray. That's how xylitol works, and enhances the activity of the airway surface liquid so it can kill off the pathogens. And that's been proven and published in top ENT journals, by the way.
Wow.
That's not coming from a company. That's coming from top publications and top journals. And it's been studied quite a bit. There's another one coming out I'm not sure if I can talk about it yet, but there's another one coming out that has been approved for use in pregnancy for airway. I'm not sure what I can say about it because it's an FDA approval right now. But what it does is just makes it much easier for you to breathe through your nose.
Ah, that's so exciting and so needed, especially for pregnant women. Dr. Stephen Lambert is asking, so how do we change the world and how do we get docs to screen?
Well, we have to do what we're doing. Going out and preaching the message, all of us.
Yes.
And I think we're going to make progress. I am I get hopeful. And when I look at all the places where now you can see free range, chickens, the eggs come from free range chickens and grass fed beef. I get more hopeful every day as I see, restaurants saying house made, all house made,
Yes.
Of course, the one thing you can't go by is baked daily. Our bread is baked daily. There's a joke about that.
There is.
It's absolutely true. So I walked up to the baker. I said, I was here yesterday. I could swear that's the same bread sitting out on your shelf as yesterday, but your sign says bread is baked daily. He goes, yes, it is baked daily. On Tuesdays, we do the muffins. We do the buns on Wednesdays. We bake bread every day.
Oh my God.
I'm going to share one little story with you. Then I have to go, sadly. But
Yes.
I was in Chipotle. This is who I am. I was in Chipotle. Grass-fed beef, right? Big sign. I look at the chicken. I'm going to get a chicken salad. I go, how about the chicken, though? So I asked him, I said, I want to have a chicken salad, and the pollo salad. And I said, by the way, what do you feed your chickens? There was no one behind me in line, so I said, would you mind asking out of curiosity? Because I want to make sure it's not soy, because that soy is all GMO.
Yeah.
You don't want your chickens eating soy at all, or the corn is GMO. So no GMO, soy, or corn. She's running around like crazy trying to get an answer. Finally, this guy comes out the back. And he goes, our chickens are grass-fed. We have grass-fed chickens. I started laughing so hard. I couldn't help myself. I said, do you have any idea that chickens don't eat grass? They don't eat grass. They eat seeds and insects. That's why people keep chickens, because they actually eat all the ticks and everything. I mean, I grew up helping my grandpa on his actual regenerative farming, his cattle farmer. He was a cattle farmer. And so you rotate all your crops. I know what chickens eat. They don't eat grass.
My grandfather had tons of roosters and chickens. He actually had a little ring for rooster fights. I remember when my grandmother would make chicken, she'll go out in the yard, grab one, and just twist its neck.
Ring the neck just like this. And then the feathers would be flying through the air. I always felt bad seeing the feathers going down. As a kid, you see the feathers going, oh, yeah, we're having chicken tonight.
My God.
That was good fresh chickens, right? Yeah, good fresh chicken.
Well, next time I'm going to make sure that I request some grass-fed chicken.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us tonight. This has been wonderful. Thank you for staying a little bit later. Everybody,
no problem.
I know that we usually have some announcements. If you need to go, please go ahead. I'm just going to do a quick announcement.
I do.
Thank you. Make sure you are in the directory so patients can find you. We have hit a record high of 3,100 people trying to find you over there. And even I think Madison the other day said, somebody find me on Aries Circle. So people are coming to you. A lot of times you don't even know. And what else we have, girls? MyoBiz. If you want to join MyoBiz, our business course, it is on demand. So you guys still have the opportunity to join. We go through all of, the most important things about you running a successful business. We're going to have a couple new lectures over there on finances and things like that, just to help you. And anyways, would love to have you. And I think that's it. Next week, who do we have next week? Rachel Rudowski. So she will be our speaker on TNL next week on 3/14. Is that Pi Day? It is. All righty, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for being here. And we'll see you next Thursday. Mwah. Thank you, girls. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Dr. Lambert, for being here.